Hey guys, Tarke here. In today's video, I want to talk about why I want Seismic Trap to be nerfed in 3.17, but for traps to be buffed in 3.17. Now, when I say I want Seismic Trap to be nerfed, here's my argument. So we don't know what the state of Path of Exile is going to be next league. We don't know if next league is going to be a case of increase in player power, a decrease in player power, increase in monster power, decrease in monster power. Path of Exile is very volatile currently. But we can all agree that Seismic Trap is currently one of the strongest skills in Path of Exile. It's definitely exceptionally strong in a league start state. Now, when you look at PoE Ninja, the numbers don't seem all that impressive. Like currently, if you were to look at trap builds in Scourge League, based on the end of league PoE Ninja thing, you'll see 3% of the ladder is playing trap. And of those 3% trap builds, 3% of them are Seismic Trap. And there's like no representation. 0.2% are doing Lightning Trap. Okay, cool. If we look in hardcore Scourge, same sort of deal. 7% of the traps builds are traps. 6% of that 7 are Seismic Trap, and a very small smattering across the other trap skills. SSF Scourge, 14% of them are traps. 14% are Seismic Traps. Very small representation of this other traps. SSF Scourge Hardcore, 11% of them are trap builds. 10% of that 11% are Seismic Trap. If you look at the Gauntlet we had recently, 28% of the Gauntlet was traps. 28% of that 28% was Seismic Trap. So traps are seeing play, yay, but all of those trap builds are Seismic Trap. Boo. In the past, when there's been a super dominant trap skill that's like outshined all the other trap builds, the trap archetype has suffered. Because what happens is you get into this awkward state where it's like, okay, well, this archetype is performing well, so we don't need to give it any support, and we can't buff it because of this one outlier build. And what has actually happened in the past is when there was the last big trap rework in Incursion League, Arc Trap was super dominant. It was the best build, or one of the best builds in Path of Exile. And so they nerfed the hell out of traps because that one build was overperforming, did nothing to nerf Arc, which was the actual problem. Then Arc Trap was still good. They then nerfed Arc, and then traps were dead, and no one but me was playing them for like 2 years. So the reason why I say that I want Seismic Trap to be nerfed but traps to be buffed is masteries. So I was someone who was very disappointed by the trap masteries. I think masteries are a really fun system overall, but I can very much see this argument kind of happening. It's like, okay, we need to make some masteries for traps because we're giving masteries to all the different archetypes in the game. Seismic Trap is really good, therefore traps are really good right now. Ice Traps saw a bunch of play in the previous league. Traps are doing well. We don't need to give them power masteries because traps are too good. Some really obvious like trap mastery stuff would have been stuff which interacted with cooldown traps. Cooldown traps are a cool build. Octavian played a pure cooldown trapper to 100 this league. What did he say when I spoke to him about it afterwards? Yeah, don't do it. Just play a normal trap build. It's better. Like, it's fine. It's viable. It works, but it was painful to play. There's not enough support for it, really. Just play a normal trap build. Why didn't we see it? I would imagine because Seismic Trap is so good. Yeah, why is there not a mastery which does something to interact with cooldown traps? Another mastery which would have been really cool to see, just as an aside, is something which interacted with trap duration. Doing 0 duration traps through Sunblast or through Cluster Jewels or whatever, it just makes traps feel differently. I really hoped that if we weren't beginning like power trap masteries, we're getting masteries that change the way you play. There are currently 6 masteries, of which 1 is basically mandatory or taken by like 95% of everyone, which is the Skitterbox Reservation one. We don't know what's happening with Reservation. We don't know if it's staying the same, if it's going to be made better, if it's going to be made worse in 3.17. A lot of people are expecting mana reservation stuff to change. We'll have to wait and see. The Trap Trigger Area of Effect is very niche. It's useful in some setups. It gives you some gear flexibility. I'm not all that mad about that one, but it's purely like a little bit of flex, like a little bit of quality of life. Doesn't really do that much to change how you play. Yeah. Recover 30 life when your trap is triggered by an enemy. Excellent leveling perk. Really strong leveling perk. Very weak endgame perk. I'm not necessarily mad at that. I think it's kind of interesting having stuff that you would only take in the early game but then falls off later. It'd be kind of cool if it could scale in some way. You can potentially stack this with a bunch of extra sources through stacking loads of uniques. And in theory, if you stacked enough of them, it could be really strong. But then the argument would be, why don't you just kill the things instead of stacking this random niche thing? Especially since jewels are such a power point for damage. Like, would you rather have a jewel which gave you like an extra 50 life trigger, or like 50 crit multi. With also percent life on it. Traps cannot be damaged, no longer needed. There was a change. There have been multiple changes to trap durability, but in the current state, correct me if I'm wrong, traps are immune to damage while they're through the air. They land, they're immune to damage, and they've got like a grace period of a couple of seconds in which they can safely trigger without being damaged. This only really matters in the situation where you're purposely throwing traps onto the ground for them to be triggered at a later date. Now, an example of when that would matter is if you were pre-laying traps for a boss that's going through like an invulnerability phase or a boss that's about to spawn, and maybe there was like a burning ground effect on the floor, so you needed the trap to land and then stay alive past the grace period before the boss and the it's a very niche, like that's a very specific edge case. We don't need that, right? Could it said be like traps for chance to rearm? Could have been cool, could have had a similar kind of effect. I don't know. Could have been a little bit more interesting. 5% chance to throw up to 4 additional traps. Seems really good on paper. You math it out, it's very minor. Compare that to some of the power perks that other archetypes get. It's absolutely nothing in terms of damage. And also consider the fact that a lot of trap builds don't even want to take the trap wheels because you've only got 1, 2, 3, 4. So at best you can only take 4 of these. And most people don't take all 4. This cluster is only good if you're doing stuff with cooldown traps. If you're not doing stuff with cooldown traps, you can only take 3. This one is very good. I think a lot of people skip over this when they shouldn't. It gives loads of trap trigger AoE, loads of trap throwing speed, very, very strong. But it's purely like a quality of life one. Most people only take like this one, and then they anoint this, or they just take these 2. In which case, if you can only ever take 2 of them, then you take the mana reservation, and then what? Maybe the life, or the throw additional... You know what I'm saying? It's like, considering we can only, at most, only have 4, I feel like our options should be more interesting. You know, it's not like axes, where, you know, all the axe ones are absolutely bonkers. And there are enough axe classes that you can take all the super powerful ones. Like, compared to axes, axe destroy corpses, bleeds you, inflicts, deal damage 50% faster. Huge DPS multiplier. 40% increased onslaught effect, super strong. Increased damage, increased AoE. That's like a whatever one. That's like a quality of life one with the AoE, but it's a quality of life one that skills give you damage. 10% more damage with hits and elements than enemies on no life. 10% more damage. Pretty good. Attacks with axes or swords grant rage. Insane. Like, air compared to air. Very, very odd. Very, very odd. Yeah, so 317, nerf Seismic Trap, if it needs nerfing, because we don't know what's happening to the state of the game, but assuming it's still a massive outlier, assuming you're going to do something, nerf that. Give more support for cooldown traps. Have it so that we can play more pure cooldown trappers. Give us like a big, juicy cooldown trap for Ice Trap. Make Siphoning Trap viable as a damage skill, or make Siphoning Trap's a decent, like, regen utility skill. I think people don't give it enough respect. It could be a lot better. It's got a limit cap of 10. I mean, you can only hit 10 enemies at once. If that wasn't there, and there was more support for trap cooldown, you could legitimately make, like, a cold degen trap build, which would be really, 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 really cool. We have heard that at some point, GGG is planning on buffing utility gems. That might include some of the trap utility gems. That was another thing which traps did quite well out of, is when they did all the nerfs to support gems, a lot of the trap gems kind of just stayed on a level, because it's like, well, traps aren't crazy overperforming currently. So like, traps are in a bit of a weird state. If they were to just like delete Seismic Trap, which I don't think they should do, like I'm not saying they should delete it. If I was going to do anything to Seismic Trap, I would change the way the explosion overlap scales. And the pulse frequency. I think that more people should be investing into trap throwing speed for the pulse frequency. I think there's nothing wrong with being able to get like all the crazy overlaps. I just think the scaling should be changed a bit. So you actually need to invest into it. Because if you look at a lot of the top trap builds, they're not taking like, they're not doing like insane amounts of scaling on the trap throwing speed to get all the crazy explosions. It's like, no, I get the helm enchant. I get some AoE. We chill. Can we delete helm enchants? Unrelated, but related rant. It is frustrating how many skills kind of go from like, this skill's pretty good, and then it's like, oh, +1 explosion. This skill is the best skill in the game. Yeah, delete the helm enchant. Anyway, basically what I'm trying to say is, if anyone's watching this, 317, more interesting trap masteries. Yay! Maybe make the trap support gym a little bit better. Ooh, make self-cast better. I know I can't really say make self-cast better in a video I'm talking about trap skills, but yeah, nerf Seismic Trap, more interesting trap support across the board. I'm Tarke. Have a good day. What would you do if anything to traps, by the way? Bye-bye.